my corner.
Oh,
I
honey,
can't.
that's don't let us go, because we're going to
Oh
be
no, no
talking
way.
about Alice Cooper's From the Inside.
Yeah,
Just a
which
very
is
honest album from him.
yeah, well, which is a perfect, like the last two single sleeves that we did last week. This one is a great, into that story of the Halloween thing and just what we're trying to do on the block with telling people what was really going on. This album was really interesting because it was probably, and I mentioned this before, it was probably the most fun album. That this one and Muscle of Love were probably the two most fun albums that we did for Alice and a lot of the other groups. There weren't very many that we had so much fun. And this one was really unique because it was 1978. Alice had already gone off on his solo career. We had done a couple of albums before this one. And I think we did like School's Out, Billion Dollar Babies, Muscle of Love, and Welcome to My Nightmare. And then this came along. And it was really kind of different. And I had great photography that we did. I hired a photographer that we used in doing this shot and this package. It was a 3-day photo shoot, and what we did was we needed to have, because Alice had gone through rehab, he was, cleaning up his act. And this was kind of like his pouring out of the awarenesses that he had during his rehab. And Bernie Taupin was brought in. He and Bernie were really good friends, and Bernie wrote a lot of the lyrics with Alice on this album. And I was able to, and I'd always been a fan of Elton John and Bernie Taupin, and so I was able to spend 3 days with Alice, but not only Alice, but with Bernie. And he had some great stories about his relationships and things that he did with Elton John. And we were able to really do a little bit of a bonding thing, which was nice. The interesting thing about where this was done, we needed, like most of the albums that we did for Alice, they were big ideas, but the money wasn't there to produce the big idea. So you had to sort of kind of make it as close to the big idea as you possibly could within a budget. So we needed a sanitarium kind of situation. And the photographer that we used had connections with this. I guess one of his relatives was in this senior care facility in Boyle Heights, which is just on the bad side of downtown in LA. And it was a convent for nuns that was then converted over to a senior care facility. And so the nuns were running this facility. And I don't know whether they realized who Alice Cooper was, even though they were out there. They were pretty much secluded and insulated inside this place in Boyle Heights. It was amazing. And so we cut a deal with them to be able to shoot this album there because we didn't have the money to go onto a stage set or on a movie lot to use a facility. So we actually spent 3 days at this senior care place, and it was amazing because the nuns, were all over Bernie and Alice. I mean, they were like giddy little teenage girls.
Oh,
I
that's
swear to God, and
neat.
a lot of them were older, but they were just so fascinated by him and what we were doing that they just got sort of swept away in it and getting autographs and taking pictures with
I
Alice.
love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
it was awesome. It really was because it was like good meeting evil, and how that all kind of could live together, I mean, they were sort of dependent on each other, and they didn't really shy away from it. And Alice and Bernie were just great, were just great. Alice has always been, and like I said, this is the first time I had a chance to meet with Bernie Taupin, and he was just a really nice guy, really, really smart and really observant of what we were doing. And this is the front of the album, and that's the back of the album. And so what we did was they had these doors on the back of the facility that were just these metal doors with windows, and we took a shot of that. And then I had a close-up shot of Alice, and I put the two together. So sort of like the way we did the Black Sabbath inside spread, where they're sort of semi-transparent in front of that four-poster bed for Black Sabbath, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. We sort of did the same thing here, where we put the image of the Doors together with a picture of Alice, and then in his eyes, you'll see a reflection of all the characters that we're using on the inside. Because this, like Berlin, for Lou Reed, had to be a movie. It had to be a movie. There was too much stuff that had to be told to go from the beginning to the end. So thinking about it that way, I created this lettering, Alice Cooper, from the inside, and I wanted from the lettering to look like bars on a window, and the word inside is behind it. You can still read inside, but it's violated by the lettering that comes down through it. So all these little subtle things. That sticker was on the shrink wrap. So when you took the shrink wrap away, it was just that image, and the front cover opened up in two halves, kind of like what we did with the Sesame Street album. Only there was really no die cuts or anything. So if you look close, you can see, and I'll send you these images, you can see the doors in Alice's face. They're very subtle. You can see the doorknob, you can see the hinges, but you mainly just see him. And before you even see him, the next thing you see is that logo, from the inside. So, and then the back cover is those doors. That's the doors that, it wasn't like that in the front, because the front looked more institutional. This was the back door. Where I guess people were brought in like a back of a hospital. It's not as glamorous and unique looking as the front. So we took that. That's the back cover. It was all brick, and this was an amazing facility because it had a big, like a rec room for these seniors, right? And let me put that up here so you can see that.
You're a master of the subliminal, Ernie. You truly captured the subliminal.
It was important. It was really, really important for this album. And I'll go to this shot next. This is when you open the album, you see this shot of all these people in this asylum, that Alice is in, and and all the people that are in there are representing a song that's on the album. We have the GI that's standing there all, out of it from Vietnam. There's the priest that's demented, looking up the skirt of the nurse that's hanging. There's all these subtle things that are represented by the song, but they're also in this shot. And for me, this was one of the rare times that I got a chance to really do something bigger than just a shot of a group. A live shot, a studio shot, whatever. This was like setting up a production. All the people had to be right. We cast these people. Joe Gannon, the guy against the wall over here with the hooker, or the nymphomaniac, is Joe Gannon. He's the guy that did all the stage production for Alice. And so he was part of that Alive family. I used a lot of the people and the guy that's sitting on the couch over here with the girl, he was our printer at Franklin Mint, at Franklin Printing, who printed money in LA. They were one of these big printers, and we used them a few times. And he was just this straight looking guy that was perfect with the girl that's next to him. And again, they're representing a song on the album. And so for me, it was like, I got to do, and it's funny because for 9 years while this was happening, I had Panavision motion picture cameras as a client, but I went out on the sets a lot, but I never really got to do anything like this, where I cast people, put them in the shot, arranged where they needed to be, made sure that they were representational of the songs that were being played. And if you notice, there's over here in this corner, there's a guy, a male nurse, against the door that says quiet room above it. So one of the things that we were always trying to do, and we've talked about this before, is to make the package that you're experiencing more than just some pictures and you take the record out and put it on the record player and you read the liner notes. I wanted to get people more involved. Pretty much everything that we did, corporate, as much as we could in corporate, it was much easier to do it in the record business because it was less strategic. It was less, dealing with the masses. They knew, in the record business, they knew who their audience was. and they geared stuff right for that audience where, you know, corporate America tried to be everything to everybody and sort of work it, reverse engineer it kind of thing. And so for me, doing this movie set, again, I treated it like a movie. That door that you see, Quiet Room, well, now, first of all, you open up the album and you experience this. So there, it's more than just pulling a record out. So you open it up, and even before you hear the music, you're seeing all these weird characters that you then learn about when you play the album. And that door opens up. It had, so here you have this room, and there's people over here in line getting their medications and all that stuff. There's a dog hovering off the ground over here with this really crazy looking guy. That guy was nuts, because I thought he was really a mental patient. You know, he was like even out there when the camera wasn't on, he was like out there. So, you know, casting this thing was really a lot of fun, and making sure that we did it right. I'm going to give you, I'm going to turn to this one now. Sorry about this, but there's just so many images, and I just didn't want to.
Unbelievable. Now, wasn't the dog, I think there was a song about the dog on the LP.
Yeah, it's in there. Again, everything that we did on this album was representational of what we were, you know, what the songs were and the story that was being told on the album. I'll go to this one. Now, so now you've opened it up, and maybe even before you go to the back cover, you open up that little door, because it's a die cut, and it opens up. And let's see, I thought I had it. Oh, it's right here. Okay, I'll go to this one first. There's the guard, and you know, here's the card guy and he's doing his card trick, and there's Alice in the quiet room, and you know, and so there's further surprise and involvement by the viewer to actually open up the door and see what's behind it, because you don't see what's behind it when, you know, it's not, and he's not there. And let me go back to this one here. You know, all you see is the door with Quiet Room above it, and it's die cut. So you're not ready for that. You're just looking, and all of a sudden you see that there's like a cut there. You know, it's like a kid when you get all the pop out stuff, and you know, it's going through each page, and each one is a different experience. That kind of thing, really, I loved those kind of books when I was a kid. And Andy Warhol in the late 60s, early 70s, had a magazine that he put out. I don't remember the name of it, but I subscribed to it, and it would come out like, I think, twice a year. And it was all these interactive things, like you turn a page and a thing would drop down and pop into a cube, and it had a string, and you know, each turn of the page was a different experience. And like this album, there were so many different experiences, so many different stories, that I needed to keep the viewer involved. So you're looking at this inside spread. You don't see the die cut right away, but you see Quiet Room, and you see all these other things that are going on with the different characters. And then so then you open that door when you're looking at the inside spread, and here's what you see with Alice in the room, right? And it looks like he's back in there. So this was a pretty amazing cover, because we did a double side printing, and I mean, it was really, but Alice was big in the music business, so they pretty much, and Shep was a great manager. Shep, when he liked something, he got it, and you know, they gave it to him. I mean, he was that kind of a manager where he always did best, you know, for his. But I always referred to him as the John Madden of rock and roll. John Madden was the coach for the Oakland Raiders when they were at their prime, and he was a player's coach. Shep Gordon was an artist manager, and his first goal was to appease Alice and make as much money as he could. Okay, that was Shep. That's, you know, and I think I had told you that 3 things that he learned in the music business was always ask for the money. The second thing is never forget to ask for the money. And the third thing is always remember to never forget to ask for the money. So that's why, you know, he was a drug dealer when he met Alice. You know, he didn't have anything. He was stealing drugs. And Alice Cooper, nobody knew who they were, really. They were signed to Bizarre Records, and they needed a manager. So anyway, and then so what else you get here? So with the opening and the opening on the inside, and you don't see it immediately. So you open that, and there's a surprise there. And then we created a certificate of insanity, where we did this drawing of Alice in the straitjacket with the doctor's thing on his head, and we got his signature and put it on there. And this came in the album. It was kind of like when Muscle of Love, you open it up and there's a sleeve, but there's also a book jacket, for kids to cover their school book with that book jacket that's in Muscle of Love. This was a piece, and now it's become very collectible. This piece, all these pieces have become very collectible by people who are huge fans. I mean, and we see it even with Hockney Diamonds, the Rolling Stones' new album. They're smart. They put it out in 15 different color records. Everybody's got these hardcore fans have to buy each one, and they're Alice Cooper fans that do the same thing. I mean, they're sort of, they have to have everything, and they have to have every piece of it. And so, this became, I mean, we didn't think about that when we were doing it. We just did it because it seemed to be fun, and we were having a lot of fun. More than anything else, we had a lot of fun with what we were doing. And then I want to go to this cover. Let's see, where is it? Here. Okay, what we have here is, and you probably open it when you turn the album over. You take the shrink wrap off, you turn it over, and there's a die cut where these where these doors open up, and you see everybody being released. They're holding the release ones, and that's printed on the sleeve that you see over here. So when you slip the sleeve with the record in it, you put it in and they had to make sure that the sleeve went in the right way. So there was a lot of little intricate things that had to happen here. It was like when we did the Rolling Stones thing with the zipper, there was a lot of care that had to go into everything. This was that same kind of thing. That sleeve needed to be inserted once the record was in. It needed to be inserted in the album with that on the back, so that when you opened up the doors, you saw them all coming out at you. And that shot is what you see in the reflection of Alice's eyes in this shot. If you look real close, you'll see those people. And the other great thing about this one is, and we kept telling the story, and I want to get to this one. Yeah, what you see in the background here in this shot, once you look way in the back, you see Joe Gannon, who's a doctor, and the nurses all kind of waving goodbye to them as they're running out at you. And I'll tell you, these nuns, it was like they were the audience. I mean, the only thing that they were lacking was popcorn and stuff, but they were just there and thrilled at everything that we were doing over that 3 days. I mean, it was such an odd experience to be in that kind of an environment with Alice Cooper and these nuns. I was raised, Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 6 years. This was something that you didn't see every day, and when they actually released the album, there was a lot of PR about that, about how, this album and Alice being, evil, and these nuns, and, so Shep was like the P.T. Barnum of our generation. And I've said that before. I mean, he really knew how to market something, when he first met Alice. We had talked about this before as well, when, everybody got up and walked out, and Shep saw the positive side of it, where these people know how to communicate. This group knows how to communicate. You just need a different message. And that's the thing that started the whole Alice Cooper thing. And, we worked with that in mind every step of the way that we're working with this album, and that in mind of what can we do that we can make, give to a consumer. Well, the certificate of insanity is something that we can, make collectible. And the actual cover itself, because it's a complete experience as you're going through it from front to back, inside, and the sleeve. I mean, it all just really worked together. And part of the other piece that we were working on with this was the in-store stuff that we were able to do. We did a mobile, or we did an in-store display that you see here, right here, and it's the front cover, and then the doors it's motorized, and so the doors open up, and you see all of them coming out at you. And it was a big display. It sat up, in the record store either on the counter, or, they had a special stand for it, but it wasn't small. It was good size. And then we did the same thing with a billboard on Sunset Strip. This billboard, the eyes lit up, Alice's eyes lit up, and the doors open and close. and open and close. And so for that kind of a thing to be done on Sunset Strip, which you know, it started out, Sunset Strip was like advertising for a lot of, you know, corporate stuff, you know, products and shit like that. And then over the, from I'd say the late 60s to the mid 80s, it was taken over pretty much completely by rock and roll. It was all these billboards because Tower Records was right at the end of the strip. And so it kind of all worked together the way it was. And so these record companies would buy the billboard by the year and pay for the whole year and put up acts, you know, whenever they, and that's when these were done. Most of these billboards were hand painted. They didn't really, not like today where they have a canvas that's photographed and then strapped around a billboard frame, or it's got an LED thing that lights up and stuff. Billboards have become very sophisticated. Back in the day, this was hand painted, you know, and then, you know, it would have been great to be able to go to the billboard company and buy those pieces, but we never did. But I went several times for different album covers that we were doing where they had billboards, and I would go and work, you know, alongside these painters that were painting the billboards, not work with them, but give them direction and approve what they were doing, because the groups wanted it that way. You know, they wanted me involved every step of the way so that it would stay consistent to what they wanted it to be. So it was really kind of interesting. Like I said, it was a, you know, interesting project, and there were albums. And the funny thing about this, and another thing that made me think about it, was when we did albums, and then there were spaces in between. Like we do an album, and then, you know, like we did School's Out, we did $1 Billion Babies, we did Muscle of Love, Welcome My Nightmare, and then we were skipped by 2 albums. One was, I think, let's see what I here wrote it down, was Goes to Hell and Lace and Whiskey. We weren't used for those 2 albums. Then we came back in on From the Inside, which was this album. And, you know, then we came back, and then we missed a couple of more, and then we came back with the Dada album. And then, you know, after that, we were brought back in for the box set, Old School. So, you know, I mean, it was, they didn't use us for each and everything, especially after, you know, the 80s when we were doing every album in a row. And then, you know, in Trash, we made a submission for the Trash album, but they didn't go with it, which was, in my opinion, 10 times better than the picture that they ended up using. But, you know, again, it's their decision. You know, all I can do is be there when they need me, and you know, and give them the best that I can, which I think that's something that I tried to do for every album we did, but especially for Alice, because I was into Alice big time. So
it's one of your most beautiful representations. I mean, I'm just in awe looking at everything. And the billboard, you know, there are some people, I watch a lot of collector shows, and
yeah,
some people, especially, you know, with movies, there was one fellow that actually got a billboard from Star Wars. So what a
wow.
shame that, oh, that billboard is beautiful. Because I was going to ask, it looks like it's a beautiful painting. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah, no, that's all gone away now, because again, they take a canvas, and you as a consumer, you can have pictures, you send them to this place, they print it on a canvas and frame it so it looks like a painting, you know, and so that technique was carried over into billboards, where they just take this big canvas that's treated with a chemical that they project the image onto, and then they wrap the actual frame of the billboard on site. They wrap it with bungee cords and stuff, Velcro and bungee cords, to actually the way you would wrap a canvas over a stretcher bars. So, you know, and now, like I said, a lot of billboards are LEDs. They're so thin. The whole piece is like less than a couple inches thick, and it's all these LEDs, and it projects images. Lights up at night. I mean, it looks great during the day. I mean, the billboards are really kind of an interesting thing, because a lot of people don't pay attention to them.
It's
You know, they
true.
become
It's
so,
true.
you know, it's like floor graphics in grocery stores where they put a graphic on the floor and, you know, right near the product where it is on the shelf or in the refrigerator case. And, you know, most people don't even notice them. And we did one for Uncle Ben's rice that was so successful. They ordered it 3 and 4 times. They kept reordering it because what it was what would you say was the number one thing that people noticed on the ground?
Noticing on the ground, I would say if they're walking, maybe the sidewalk or the or what's around them, maybe cars. I would think that maybe cars.
Money.
Oh,
So what I did was I created
money.
a because they had these rice bowls, Uncle Ben rice bowls, and they were rolling them out, and they were like $3.50 or something, right? So I did a floor graphic that was three single dollars and change in a circle, laying on the floor with Uncle Ben's rice, you know, logo and stuff. But you know, we had to do it. You get when you print money, you have to print it either smaller or larger by a certain percentage, which was perfect for us because I wanted it to be a little bit bigger than real, so that people would notice it even more. And that floor graphic was probably one of the most successful corporate things that I ever did because, like I said, they kept reordering it. It was national. They used it nationally. I was doing a lot of work for Uncle Ben's. People that I had worked with for Nestle for years would leave Nestle and go to other companies like Sara Lee and Coca-Cola, and, you know, all these other companies, Kraft Foods, and they would bring me with them. And it was great. I mean, being at Nestle for almost 30 years, you know, working with them as their smallest agency, taking work away from big agencies. And it carried over to the music business too, because it gave us the financing that we needed to be able to do an album cover for $3,000. Yeah, I think the most we ever got paid for an album was $5,000. And that's all in. That's illustrations, mechanicals, lettering, photography, everything. And those pieces that we did for $3,000 and $4,000 and $5,000, $1,500 would start at $1,500 and go up from there. Those pieces are now worth tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's funny because Drew Struzan, I was giving stuff away. The musicians we were working with, we had talked about on other shows, you know, Kenny Rankin and people like that I gave the pieces to. And you know, my partner wasn't really happy about it, but the main partner, Bonnie, Drew would go up to her and say, you know, tell him to stop doing that, stop giving away, because that's going to be your retirement. Even then he knew, okay, we all knew that Drew was something exceptional. Drew was like from another planet. You know, he was able to do things that normal people couldn't do. And I know normal artists. I went to, you know, 5 years of college, art school. I met a lot. I worked in New York with a lot of major artists, and there was nobody ever before and still to this day that was like him. Nobody. It was unreal. And when you have that kind of manpower, when you have that kind of energy, we could stand toe to toe with anybody. We had no fear. We crossed over into the, you know, advertising agency world and got Alltech Lansing, low hanging fruit because it was music related, but it was $1 million account. That was unheard of. You know, we never did anything like that. We were doing album covers for like $1,500, you know, $2,500, $3,000, and all of a sudden we get this account that's like $1 million a year. And, you know, even some of the smaller corporate accounts like Anvil Cases and some of those early ones, we never really got that kind of money. And it was very rarely was it an agency thing. It was Flying Tiger. There were several that were building up to Alltech. And then from then on, it was just like, oh, no stopping us. But then, just like life, right? When you think everything's going great and nothing can go wrong and everything that you're getting, you're just nailing left and right. The movie industry started shifting from photography to illustration, and they hired away every one of my illustrators. They hired away Drew, they hired away Bill Garland, they hired away Carl Ramsey, they hired away Joe Garnett, because they needed those illustrators. And it's okay because, and each one of them came to me and said, you know, we're not coming to you to have you try and match what they're willing to pay us. Because what they were willing to pay was ridiculous. I mean, it was major money, but they spend millions of dollars on movies, and they spend maybe tens of thousands on albums, you know. So there's a big discrepancy there in what you could be paid. And each one of them left. We were friends, and still to this day friends with the ones that are still alive. But you know, it was okay, because our industry was changing. This is by the early mid to mid '80s, and our music world was declining, and our corporate world was excelling. It was amazing, because in the beginning, the music business didn't have any reflection, in positively and quite negatively in some cases, to corporate America.
Very true. That is very, very true. And you always thought out of the box, and that was, you know, that's so evident in your work. When I, you know, like when I'm looking at the which you're just displaying, makes me want to, you know, go ahead and research the album even further, because as I'm always sharing, we're learning from you. I listened. One of my favorite cuts on there from Alice was it was very honest. How you going to see me now? He
Yes,
was just
yes,
so honest, because
yes,
Alice is a master of theatrics, as
yes.
we
Well,
you and I
he
both
brought
know.
theater to music. He
He
really did. There
sure
were a lot of
did.
people who tried to copy him, including Kiss. You know, but yes, he was, because remember, and it's so funny you should say that, because that's my favorite song from the album as well. And you know why? Because it was him raw, him opening up.
Yes,
Okay, and
yes.
he just didn't pull back any punches. This is what I was. This is what I went through. This album is all about what he went through. As you get into each one of these songs and listen to them, and you look at the graphics from these people that are in this shot, you start seeing, because most people, you know, they look at this shot and go, okay, it's a whole bunch of crazy people in a room. Okay, I get it. But no, it's more than that. Each one of these people is handpicked, is hand selected, and outfitted in what we think was important to reflect on who they were supposed to be. The guy in the corner here, the priest, you know, was a real pervert, and you know, and he wasn't a priest in real life, but people, you know, don't even until, and I guess some real fans, as they start playing the album, they make the connection. You
Yeah.
know, and again, it's all part of the interaction. You don't get it at first. You know, you just think it's a bunch of crazy looking people. I don't, you know, what do they all have in common? Well, they're all crazy, but each one of them has a song written about it. Each one of them has an experience that Alice experienced, and he's sharing it with us. You know, and that's kind of the thinking. And it's so funny that you should mention that song, because it's mine as well. Because how are you going to see me
Hey.
now? That's it. Now that you know who I really am, how are you going to see me? Are you still going to let me be that crazy guy that you like, or are you going to think differently of me because I had, you know, these addictions? How are you going to see me now? You know, and that song, and it's again, God bless you, Joyce. You really nailed it. You know, I mean, that song, and I have it picked out here. When I was waiting for you to ask me, I was ready to do the mind meld, but you know, you beat me to the punch on this one, because it's really, for me, it was what the whole album was about. If you listen to that first, and then you go back and listen to the other songs, and you look at this image, you open up that album and set it up, and as the songs are going, you find that character. You find that character, and Alice tells you all about it. You know, and our secretary, Carol Schneider, that's her boyfriend, Keith.
Oh,
There, you
wow.
know, I mean,
That
they
is
were, a lot of them were
something.
friends. A lot of them were people that we just cast. Like I said, this guy over here, he was real crazy. We had him in a straitjacket and stuff, and he loved being in the straitjacket. When we were taking breaks and stuff, other people would relax and stuff, and he was just like, you know, it was like we went to an insane asylum and got him and put him in this shot, and then, you know, handcuffed him and took him back, you know, in the straitjacket after we were through with the photo shoot. And again, you know, even to the clock on the wall, the time that the clock is saying, all
Yes.
those things are placed in this shot for a reason. And the reason was, the more you get into the album, the more you get into the songs, the more you relate it to the images that you're seeing, it becomes a motion picture in your head. And that's what I was trying to do here. I was trying, just like the Lou Reed Berlin album, was the same thing with that libretto, with each shot being representational of a song, and the surrealism that you know those shots had in that Berlin album were still amazing. And this was likewise. It was an amazing album. We had so much fun doing it, you know, and um, it was just so great of you to pick this one because it was just another Alice Cooper album we did. It never really went much deeper, but I had to really sort of put on my thinking cap and bring myself back to where I was when we did this, and how the thoughts that were going through my head and the challenges that I had, and how I feel that I solved those problems. And I would have loved to have done movies and directed movies and stuff, but it wasn't really what I was good at. What I
You
was good
nailed
at.
it. You nailed it on this, Ernie. This is
Yeah.
probably now my favorite design. It is just amazing. Thank you so much. You give us a lot to really go ahead and explore it. This is just a great episode of Ernie's Corner. Thank you so
Well,
much.
no, thank you, Joyce. I love your costume, and you know what song we should play, right?